ですね、まずじゃあ壇上にすでに上がっていらっしゃる、本日の登壇者の方、ご紹介したいと思います。一番じゃあ私に近い方からですね、本プログラムの、共同企画者でありますディーナ・シャラビさんです。それから、向こう側に来まして、アラブエクスプレス展に、参加していただいてます、ハライル・サルキシアンさんです。そして、日本側の、対談相手として、アーティストの小泉明朗さんです。このセッションはですね、ディーナさんの、モデレーションによって、進行させていただきます。では、ディーナさんにマイクを、渡したいと思います。ディーナさん、よろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much, Ken Kondo. Thank you all very much for being here today. It will be a long day, but I hope it will be an inspiring and thought-provoking one for you. Our first session today is Tracing History, and it is my absolute pleasure to have these two artists with us today. As Ken mentioned, Hrer Sarkisian is one of the participating artists in Arab Express. He was born in Damascus in Syria and spent his formative years working in his father's photographic studio. He's a very accomplished photographer, and it's a great honor to have him with us today. Kaizumi Mero was born in Gunma, Japan, and currently lives in Yokohama, and studied in London and in Amsterdam. So, without further ado, we will start by asking Hrer about his practice. He is going to present first. Hrer, although he was born in Syria and has a Syrian passport, is of Armenian origin. And so I would like to ask you, Hrer, if you could talk a little bit about your work and the circumstances around it.
First of all, I want to thank you everyone for coming, and also Mori Museum and Mathaf for giving me this opportunity to come for the first time to Japan. My work is always deals till now with my background and where I come from, and I always try to work around things, stories or that relates to me, which are invisible, but in another sense, it is visible in my daily life or in my surrounding. So it's something that I cannot escape from it. It's always in front of me. With photography, I always try. It's a way. I was not introduced to any other kind of media because I was working with my father. I was born and in the studio, literally, since I was a kid, and it's where I got. That was my study actually and that's how I was introduced to photography. And later, I started to dig more and know more about contemporary art, photography, and that's how I started to travel around, see exhibitions, and and it becomes for me a way of dialogue, or to trace, let's say, to investigate.
Thank you. So the pieces that are in Arab Express by Hrer, it's a series of images called execution squares, which document different locations in Damascus and Syria. But the works that you're going to talk about today are specifically relate to the Armenian genocide. Sorry. And before you start talking about them, I thought that it might be useful for the audience to understand, just to have a little bit of a historical background to these events. So the Armenian people historically have lived across what was formerly the Ottoman Empire and Russia, and in they're a Christian population, and during the late 19th century, as Turkish nationalism emerged, and as problems continued between Christians and Muslims in the Balkans, the situation for Armenians became more and more fraught and difficult. During World War I, when the Ottoman Empire sided with the Central Powers against the Allies, the Armenians suffered considerably, and there was a genocide of almost 1.5 million people were killed in 1915, around then. So a lot of Armenians, the ones who survived, also moved out of Western Armenia in what had been the Ottoman Empire, which became Turkey, into other countries. So many went to Russia, to the United States, but many went closer by, including Lebanon and Syria, where Hurer's family ended up. So this genocide, what is now referred to as the Armenian genocide, has still not been acknowledged to this day by the Turkish government, although many other countries recognize that this took place. And so it's still a complicated part of history of the region. And many Armenians who grew up in Lebanon or Syria or other parts of what we call the Arab world consider themselves Arab, but of course it's a much more complicated story, and identity has much deeper roots than is often perceived. So given that background, Hurer, perhaps you would like to talk more about your specific works today.
Well, I will I will show these two recent works that I've done, which deal with again my background, and it has a lot to do with the genocide, because the genocide it is something that we live till now, even after 100 years. We still live it day by day. It's something that we don't forget, and it's something also. It's one of the main structures for our identity, and just to become identified within these different societies we live in four sides of the planet. So this work, it's on the screen. It's called History, and it has been done in public libraries in Istanbul, where people can have access to books, history books of old and new Turkey. The idea came of this work from I've been in an exhibition of one of the municipalities of Istanbul, and there was this panel of the timeline of the history of Turkey, and it started from 1600 till until they created the Republic of Turkey. And there is, of course, one date was missing in this panel, and it was 1915. So for me, it's been always the question why it's something that me as someone who has Armenian origins does not exist in Turkey, or my story doesn't exist, so I don't have existence. So the idea of photographing these public libraries and archive centers came from here, actually. It's I wanted to face the physical evidence of history itself, of me, of my family, and of where I come from, because my grandparents come originally from Eastern Turkey. The work itself, the process how it went, it was not easy at all, because each library I went in, I needed a specific authorization to enter. And the main problem was whenever they read the letter that I got from the art center, it was a guarantee platform, but now it's sold in Istanbul. They helped me a lot with this project, because I couldn't get into any of these. It's quite impossible. So the main problem was my name, because Armenian names, they always end up with Yan. It means the son of. So that was really, every time they read the letter, it was a very humiliating moment for me, just to stand there and just letting me, or giving me the permission to photograph. Of course, after being through a lot of questions, some of them refused, and some of them just let me in without understanding the process or of why I would photograph this project.